Hello guys, and welcome to episode 1 of Baking in Camouflage, because it's so much manlier. Yeah, right. Anyway, this time I'm gonna introduce my flagship, the chocolate cake. This recipe has been in my family for some generations now, and it always has been passed down from mother to daughter. It's been handed down from my grandmother to my mother, and now to me. And please enjoy. First we'll start with the dough. I separated 7 egg yolks from their egg whites, and I whisked the egg whites until they stiffen up, you know the drill. I used eggs about this big or this small, so maybe small to medium, maybe small sized eggs. To the 7 egg yolks we're going to add 200 grams of powdered sugar, 200 grams of margarine. You want to bring that to room temperature first, otherwise you'll get some unpleasant lumps. Finally add some vanilla. We don't use vanilla extract here, we have it in powdered form called vanilla sugar. It's a pack of about 8 grams. I don't know how much weaker it is than the vanilla extract. I guess it's just try and error if you want to use the liquid. Now I'm gonna give that a good mix. After a few minutes of stirring it should look like this. And now we're going to add about 1/16 of a liter of hot water. It should now look something like this. That's the consistency we're going for. Now I'm going to melt about 200 grams of chocolate. Don't use milk chocolate, use cooking or baking chocolate. It's produced especially for baking. And don't go too hot, we just want to melt it, not burn it. Now add that nice gooey chocolate to the dough mixture and mix it all in. Now add about 150 grams of fine flour, not too coarse, it's got to be fine flour, along with about 16 grams of baking powder. It comes in packages of about 16 grams, and it's basically baking soda. It helps the dough rise in the oven. Rise, my friend. And finally, don't forget adding the stiffened 7 egg whites. I have a tendency to forget them in the fridge. And now it's time to put the dough, a nice fluffy dough, into the already pre-buttered and pre-floured baking pan. Now just evenly spread it and shake the pan a little bit after spreading, so there are no bubbles in it or something. And yeah, preheated the oven to about 200 degrees Celsius. That's 390 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're good to go. Put the dough in and leave it there until it has risen significantly. Then turn back the heat to about 150 degrees Celsius, that's about 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and leave it there for like an hour. Once the dough has risen like this, turn down the heat and wait for another hour or so. In the meantime you can prepare the filling for the cake. Just take a quarter liter of cream, unwhipped cream, add about 200 grams of baking chocolate again, along with about 200 grams of candied sugar. You can also use powdered sugar, we're gonna mix that up anyway, and about 100 grams of unsalted butter. Yeah, the cooking nerds among my subscribers may already have guessed it. Basically we're making a ganache here. My grandmother used to call it a Paris cream, but it's a ganache really. We're making a really soft one, so we can fill the cake with it. And it's gonna be fine. Just don't crank up the heat too high. We don't want to burn anything or cook anything, by all means. Just melt it all down and give it a good mix. When everything is melted together nicely like this, there are no lumps or anything, and it can be pretty quickly, so keep an eye on it and keep stirring it all the time. So once everything is melted together like this, take it away from the heat and let it cool down, like in really cool down, like in overnight or something. That dough looks just about ready, but we have to make sure of that. So I'm going to stab them. And if there's no dough sticking on the knife once you pull it out, the cake's done. After letting it cool down for a bit, I removed the baking pan and put the dough upside down on a tray, so we get a nice flat top. And yeah, the dough is obviously not happy. I mean, he's been burned alive, stabbed with a knife. Well, but I hate to break it to you, buddy. You're gonna get cut in half as well. But we have to let him cool down all the way to do that. Now the dough is gonna get cut in half, so we can add the filling. You can cut it in half with a large knife, but it's very difficult to do so because the two halves get uneven quite easily. My father is a real expert in doing so, but I'm not. So I just use a string, wrap it around and go like this. Like the assassinate the dough technique. Of course the string is not supposed to snap, but once you go in there, go all the way through. So you see, works every time, even if the string snaps. Two very nice, evenly cut halves. After the cream ganache filling has cooled down to the point that it's almost solid, we're going to whip it. Add some rum. I know it looked kind of dark before and now it's kind of bright, but I didn't add any milk or anything. It got bright on its own. It also increased in volume. I guess the cream inside, once whipped, gets activated or something. Just so you get the texture of that. It's not as fluffy as a chocolate mousse. It's very, very heavy, still very soft. Now that I filled the cake, I'm going to add some apricot jelly on top of it. Don't be shy with the jelly. And you should use the kind that hasn't got any fruit pieces in it, so everything is nice and smooth. And I know that there are many frostings ready-made available in the supermarket, and some of those are actually pretty good. But we are going to make our own frosting from scratch. This is a very old confectioner's recipe from around World War II, I think. We're gonna start adding about 100 milliliters of water, about 200 grams of sugar, another one of those vanilla packs, and now I'm gonna bring this to a really good boil and let it boil for about 3 minutes so the water reduces a bit and the sugar caramelizes a little. Keep stirring so the sugar doesn't get burned. Yep, that's boiling alright. Keep it that way for about 3 minutes. Okay, it's reduced a bit. Now it's time to add about 200 grams of baking chocolate. I turned off the heat already, by the way. Melt it down. If it gets too thick, just add a little more water. And put about 20 grams of butter in there. Only 20 grams, because we're basically making a chocolate flavored sugar syrup here. And never stop stirring. This is key. Okay, I already took it off the heat, and now we're gonna keep stirring that until it's cooled down. It's kind of tricky, because if you let it cool down too much and then pour it over the cake, you'll have like a quarter-inch thick layer of chocolate sitting on top that doesn't spread. If you pour it on the cake too early, it won't stay on the cake and just gather up in on your plate. Apparently I think I made something wrong, because I got little lumps of chocolate in there that won't melt. But anyway, I ain't come this far. Okay, it's really thick now, getting harder and harder to stir. I'll just pour this over the cake and see what happens. Here we go. Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. There's plenty on top, but not so much on the sides, but it's still flowing. The trouble is you can't spread it like you would a normal icing, because it would break up instantly, and that doesn't look too good. Okay, it doesn't look much different now that it's cooled down. I guess I screwed up the icing for 1,000th time. Anyway, you can decorate it any further, of course, any way you like. You take it away from here. Oh, and one more thing. You should always put it in the refrigerator when you don't eat it, because the filling has a tendency to melt at room temperature.